It was the kind of day that made you feel like the sky had forgotten how to do anything but cry. Gray clouds loomed low over the rooftops of Westbury, a quiet little town in the south of England. The rain had started in the early morning and never let up, not heavy, not stormy, just that persistent drizzle that crept under your jacket and made your socks feel damp no matter what. I was on my last round of deliveries, steering the van through narrow residential streets where the houses looked nearly identical: brick fronts, white-framed windows, tiny hedges. The windscreen wipers squeaked in rhythm as I pulled up outside number 12, Hawthorne Lane. Just one parcel left. Then home. Then tea. I grabbed the brown box from the passenger seat, jogged up the drive, and pressed the bell. No sound came from inside, just the muffled thrum of rain on the porch roof. I was about to leave the parcel by the door when it creaked open. She stood there in a loose jumper, her hair tied back in a messy bun, a steaming mug in her hand. Her eyes met mine, and for a second we both paused. Not in some dramatic, movie sort of way. Just like the moment needed a breath. "Hi," she said, stepping aside. "You must be soaked. Do you want to wait in here until it eases up?" I blinked. That wasn't standard. People barely said thanks most days, let alone invited you in. "I'm all right," I said, shifting my weight. "Still got a few drops left to outrun." She smiled, warm and not pushy. "Suit yourself. Just, you look cold." There was something about her voice. It didn't beg. It didn't flirt. It just welcomed. And honestly, I was drenched to the bone. So I nodded. "Only until it eases off." Inside, it was warmer than I expected. Cozy. Lived in. The kind of place with books stacked on the armrests and a faint scent of something like vanilla and pine. Her dog, a golden retriever with lazy eyes, lifted its head from the sofa and thumped its tail once, then dozed off again. "Tea?" she asked. I hesitated. "Sure. Why not?" She disappeared into the kitchen. I heard the clink of mugs, the sound of a kettle clicking on. I took a seat near the window, watching the rain blur the world outside. It felt surreal, like I'd slipped into someone else's afternoon. When she came back, she handed me a chipped mug.
"I'm Isabel," she said.
"Lucas," I replied. And just like that, we began talking. About nothing. About everything. The weather, of course. Then work. She ran her own little business from home, doing custom painted ceramics. Showed me a few pieces. Delicate cups with wildflowers, plates with foxes dancing in the margins. I told her about the delivery job, how I liked the quiet of the van, the smallness of it all. Time passed faster than I realized. The rain hadn't stopped, but it had softened, misting more than falling. I stood to leave. She walked me to the door.
"Well,
if you ever get caught in the rain on this street again," I smiled. "I'll keep that in mind." I left number 12, Hawthorne Lane, with an odd warmth I couldn't quite place. Something about that house, about her, stuck with me. The kind of feeling that doesn't come from just a cup of tea or a dry seat. It felt like a door had opened. And not just the one I'd walked through. That night, back in my flat, I found her name still lingering in my thoughts. Isabel. A name that somehow already felt familiar. The rain hadn't lasted long after I left Isabel's house. By the time I reached the depot, the skies were already breaking apart, bits of golden evening light leaking through. But I barely noticed. I kept replaying that quiet hour at number 12 in my head, her soft laugh, the scent of rosemary from the kitchen, the way the dog had thumped its tail at me like I'd passed some silent test. I told myself I wasn't going to think about it too much, that it was just one of those odd, kind moments people sometimes offer each other. But before I knew it, I was staring at my phone, hesitating over the contact list. I'd saved her number without really thinking when she'd scribbled it on the back of a receipt and said, "Just in case you want a proper cup of tea next time." That night, I didn't call, but a week later, I did. I'd just finished a delivery run through Bath when I pulled over in a lay-by, rain pattering against the windscreen once again. I opened my phone, thumb hovering, and then tapped. The ring only lasted a moment. "Lucas?" she answered, like she'd already known it would be me.
"Hi," I said.
Just thought I'd check if that offer for tea still stood. There was a pause, and then I could hear the smile in her voice. "I was hoping you'd ask, but actually, how do you feel about a drive?" "A drive?" "There's a place just outside the city. Quiet, green, never crowded. I could pack something light. Sandwiches. Biscuits." I glanced out at the wet road.
"Now."
"Tomorrow.
"Midday."
If the rain lets us off the hook."
It did.
The next day was crisp and dry. The clouds stretched thin over blue. I picked her up outside her house. She was already waiting, 2 brown paper bags in her arms, her hair plaited loosely over one shoulder. The drive out of town was calm. She hummed along to the music, Fleetwood Mac, something older. I found I liked the silence between songs even more than the melodies. It wasn't awkward. It was just quiet in the best way. We found the place she'd mentioned, a grassy hill overlooking a stretch of woodlands. No one else was around. Birds chirped overhead, and the wind was cool on our faces. She spread a blanket, opened one of the bags, and handed me a sandwich. Cheese and chutney. Simple.
Perfect.
We ate. We talked. And then we didn't. We just sat, letting the trees sway around us and the world fall away. Eventually she spoke. I was engaged once. It ended quietly. No shouting, no drama. Just too many silences that didn't feel right. I looked over. Her gaze was steady, honest. "I was with someone too," I said. "Didn't last long. We weren't quite reading from the same page." Isabel nodded, folding a corner of the blanket in her lap. "Funny, isn't it? How we talk about these things like old furniture. Heavy but familiar." That afternoon stretched out like it wanted to last forever. The kind of day you remember in slices. A breeze, the way someone looks at the horizon, the crunch of leaves beneath your shoes. When I dropped her home, she didn't ask me in, just touched my hand lightly as I passed her the bags. "Thanks for saying yes," she said. I smiled. "Thanks for asking." Driving home, I didn't turn the radio on. I didn't need to. Her voice was still echoing in the quiet. And for the first time in a long while, it felt like something had begun. After that day, something shifted between us, though we never put a label on it. Texts came more often, little messages about the weather, recommendations for local pubs, sometimes just a quick thinking of you. I found myself looking forward to those small notes, as if they were tiny beacons lighting up the quiet parts of my days. We started meeting up regularly, but never rushed anything. There were walks through the park, lazy afternoons at a cafe down by the river, and long evenings where we'd sit in her living room, each lost in a book or scrolling on our phones, yet somehow feeling connected just by being near. Isabel had a way of making ordinary moments feel meaningful. One chilly Sunday, she brewed a pot of tea and made scones from scratch. She laughed when I asked if she had a secret recipe. "Just a bit of patience," she said, handing me a scone still warm. It wasn't just the scones or the tea, though. It was the way she looked at the world, calm, thoughtful, steady, that made me want to stay longer. She didn't rush or push. She let things happen in their own time. I remember one evening, rain drumming softly against the windows, when we found ourselves sharing stories about our families. Isabel spoke about her mom and dad living in Cornwall, the little fishing village she grew up in, and how she missed the sea air. I told her about my sister, who lived in London now, and the silly arguments we'd have over football teams. She smiled at the details, and I could see her imagining it all. There was comfort in sharing these pieces of ourselves without fear or pressure. Still, there was always that quiet question lingering somewhere between us. Was this just friendship? Or something more? Neither of us said it out loud. We didn't have to, because sometimes the space between words speaks the loudest. One evening, as I left her house after a late cup of tea, she stood at the door, raindrops catching the light from the porch. "Can you stay until it stops raining?" she asked softly. I looked up at the dark sky and smiled. "I think I will." A week passed after that rainy evening, and things started to feel different. Not because we said anything new, but because the space between us was filled with quiet understanding. One night, we sat on the porch under a clear sky, the stars twinkling softly above. Inside, the gentle snoring of her dog, Alfie, was the only other sound. Isabel turned to me and said, "I've been thinking. I want you to officially move in." I blinked, surprised but not shocked. She continued, "I know you're practically here all the time, but I want it to be ours, not just mine." I nodded slowly, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "Yeah, I want that too." She smiled, then added firmly, "I don't care what my parents think. They had their chance at happiness. This is mine." So I started moving my things over. A few boxes from my old flat, my tools, some clothes, and even a box of DVDs I probably wouldn't watch again, but couldn't bring myself to throw away. It wasn't a huge change, but it felt like the beginning of a new chapter, one we were writing together. Living together wasn't always perfect. Isabel liked to plan everything down to the last detail, while I was more of a go-with-the-flow type. She'd get anxious if the fridge was low on groceries. I'd forget to check altogether. She loved quiet Sunday mornings with a cup of tea. I liked music playing while making breakfast. But we learned to make it work. We grew into each other's rhythms. The little things, a pair of my muddy boots next to her gardening shoes, Alfie's leash hanging beside my spare bike helmet, became symbols of our shared life. The garden hammock we'd both fallen asleep in on lazy summer afternoons was proof that this was home. It wasn't glamorous or perfect. We weren't rich, and our life was far from flashy. But it was real.
Solid.
And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. After moving in, life didn't suddenly become easier or perfect. We still had our differences and daily challenges. Isabel liked to plan every detail, while I preferred taking things as they came. She got nervous when the fridge was almost empty. I often forgot to check it. She enjoyed quiet Sunday mornings with tea, and I liked music playing while making breakfast. Despite these little clashes, we found a way to balance each other. We learned to listen, to compromise, and to make space for each other's habits. I kept doing delivery work for a while, but I also started taking on small jobs fixing appliances. It began with a neighbor's broken coffee maker, then a friend's microwave, and later someone's bike. Word spread slowly, and I built a small but steady client base. Isabel was my biggest supporter. She helped me create a simple website for my repair business and said, "If we're doing life together, let's do it right." We weren't rushing anything. Marriage wasn't even a topic at first. We were happy sharing space, bills, and decisions, living our version of commitment in our own way. Then, after 2 years, one quiet evening in early autumn, I decided to ask. No grand proposal, just us on the couch, Alfie snoring at our feet, a silly movie playing quietly. I looked at her and said, "Do you want to get married?" She blinked, surprised. "That's how you're asking?" I smiled. "Want something flashier?" She laughed softly. "No, that's perfect." Our wedding was small. Just close friends, a few neighbors, and her cousin who played guitar during the ceremony. Her parents didn't come, but sent a formal card. Isabel didn't let it spoil the day. She stood beside me, steady and sure, and said, "I do." We danced under string lights in her aunt's garden, drank wine from mismatched glasses, and laughed until our sides hurt. That night, lying beside her, I felt something I'd never felt before: complete peace. Our life after the wedding wasn't like a storybook romance. It was waking up early, arguing about who left the light on, and making endless grocery lists. Vet appointments for Alfie became routine, and learning to say sorry when we were wrong became part of our daily rhythm. We discovered that love wasn't about perfection, but about patience, understanding, and making space for each other, even on the worst days. One evening, a few months ago, Isabel sat across from me at the kitchen table. She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring, and said quietly, "I've been thinking maybe I want to be a mom." I didn't say anything at first, not because I was scared, but because I wasn't expecting to feel so calm hearing it. A younger me might have panicked, but sitting there, watching her, I just smiled. "Let's talk about it," I said. "Nothing's decided yet. We're not rushing, but we're dreaming together." The months that followed felt like quiet steps toward something new. We didn't rush, but we talked more about what life might look like with a little one around. Isabel was patient, and I listened carefully, learning to open up to possibilities I hadn't considered before. Meanwhile, my small repair business kept growing slowly. Word of mouth brought in more neighbors, and I found satisfaction in fixing things with my own hands. Isabel helped with the website, making it look clean and simple, a perfect reflection of us. Our evenings often ended with cups of tea and planning little projects around the house. The shed became a space not just for tools, but for ideas. We dreamed about the future, about a family, about making a home that belonged to both of us. Some days, the challenges felt bigger. Balancing work, life, and emotions wasn't always easy. But every time I looked at Isabel, I remembered why we chose each other. The messy, imperfect, beautiful life we were building, it was ours. It was a crisp autumn evening when I finally asked Isabel to marry me. There was no grand gesture, no elaborate plan. We were curled up on the couch, the soft glow of the TV casting shadows across the room. Our dog, Alfie, was asleep at our feet, and a gentle rain tapped against the window. I turned to her and said simply, "Would you like to get married?" She blinked, surprised by the plainness of my question. "That's how you're asking?" I smiled. "Would you prefer something flashier?" She laughed quietly. "No, that's perfect." In that moment, everything felt right. It wasn't about the ceremony or the ring. It was about us, our journey, and the life we were choosing together. We spent the next weeks planning a small wedding, just close friends and family, in a cozy backyard. Isabel's cousin played guitar softly as we said our vows under the string lights. It wasn't extravagant, but it was real, just like us. After the wedding, life settled into a new rhythm, comfortable and familiar. We weren't wealthy, nor did we have grand ambitions, but what we shared was steady and true. Our mornings were a mix of small routines: Isabel's quiet tea time, my breakfast with music playing in the background. Sometimes we clashed over little things: who left the light on, whether to buy groceries now or wait until tomorrow. But every disagreement ended with understanding and laughter. I kept working deliveries, but slowly started fixing small appliances on the side: a neighbor's toaster, a friend's bike. Word spread, and my small repair business began to grow. Isabel was my biggest supporter. She helped me make a simple website and cheered every new client. Together, we built more than just a home. We built a partnership where we could be ourselves, with all our quirks and differences. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. A few months ago, Sitting across from me at the kitchen table, Isabel looked down at her hands and quietly said, "I've been thinking, maybe I want to be a mom." For a moment, I didn't say anything. Not because I was scared, but because I wasn't sure what to expect. But then I looked at her, twisting the ring on her finger, and I smiled. "Let's talk about it. Nothing's decided yet. We're not rushing, but we're dreaming together." Looking back, I realize life doesn't start when you have everything planned. Sometimes it begins with a simple knock on the door during a rainstorm. When you least expect it, someone steps into your story and changes everything. I never planned on falling in love that day, or staying. But she asked me, "Can you stay until it stops raining?" And somehow I never left.